when I reflect on all the major technology inflection points or big platform changes over my decades of working, it's not like all these jobs got eliminated. Maybe some did, but mostly they morphed and new jobs emerged. And I think that's going to be true here too. But I think what any one human can do with all these little agentic assistants
Yeah.
doing work on their behalf and the humans maybe orchestrating that and delivering, I think that's going to be really interesting. Hi, I'm Debbie Brackeen, Chief Innovation and Corporate Development Officer for CSAA Insurance Group, and this is the future of insurance.
Debbie, thank you for joining me and taking some time out to talk about things. We are going to talk about AI. I know everyone's excited for that. I had to get the SEO hit in there as early as possible. But before we do that, can you just give a little background on yourself and for those who don't know CSAA, and what you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So, Debbie Brackeen, I lead innovation and corporate development for CSAA Insurance Group. And CSAA Insurance Group is one of three AAA insurance companies in the US. And for over 100 years, we've been providing personal auto and home to AAA members in 23 states and the District of Columbia. And we also have a commercial insurance subsidiary that I'm very proud of, Mobilitas, which my team helped start, that sells primarily commercial auto to the on-demand sharing economy.
Very cool backstory on Mobilitas, but that's a conversation for another day, probably. But innovation at carriers used a lot doesn't always mean the same thing. In some, it's very real and produces a lot and has a real impact. And CSA's innovation team was in my first book, so I can say either I'm lying as well, or it actually is very real. And in others, it's not. It's sort of where ideas and POCs go to die, or interesting things that never make it over the fence into the core business. You guys have seemed to have been able to avoid that mishap or that folly of innovation. Can you share a little bit about what is innovation at CSA and maybe why is it different or real, versus where I think some carriers have struggled?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. In terms of my background, I've been doing corporate innovation now for over 20 years. I think I've always gravitated to the next new thing. I started my career at Apple 10 years, too many decades ago, but I was there for 10 years. And I worked for Sun, I worked for HP, eBay, a couple of venture-backed startups. So my history's in tech
Yeah.
and Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is always about the next new thing. So that
Yeah.
I bring that with me. But I led innovation at Citibank before coming to CSAA, and I think one of the reasons why we've been successful in making innovation not only real, but even having a material impact with our Mobilitas business in particular is the credit is to the CEO who hired me 8.5 years ago, and the board and the leadership team really recognizing that disruption was on the horizon,
Yeah.
particularly for our personal auto insurance business. At that time, this is like 2016. A lot of market analysts were, predicting the peak and the decline in personal passenger auto insurance as an overall market. Elon was saying autonomous vehicles are coming tomorrow. Uber and Lyft were still early,
Yeah.
and less, let's say, scaled than they are today, but a threat. And so I had the benefit, I suppose, in my role, but the leadership team had the wisdom to sort of say, look, let's put a BHAG, like a big stake in the ground for what does innovation need to translate to for the business, and that was like $1 billion in new revenue from new sources in a decade.
Yeah.
And I took that to heart and leveraged the heck out of it. And I think we were very intentional in investing in building a culture of innovation.
Hmm.
So and I've been an operator and earlier in my career of different businesses, a software P&L, a services P&L. So I have a lot of empathy for being in an operator role. I mean, when you're in an operating role, I don't care what kind it is. I mean, every day is just what set of fires do you get welcome to, that morning.
Yeah.
And whatever you thought you were going to do that day, you still have to try to get it done amid dealing with the fires.
Yeah.
And so, like, nobody wants to hear from, like, hi, I'm here from corporate and I want to talk to you about innovation, or talk to you about anything from corporate, really. And so, I think we've come a long way in 8.5 years, and it wasn't just me or my team. It was really a collective commitment on the part of the leadership team, and
Yeah.
just being serious about, we need to find new sources of growth. Turns out none of those predictions really panned out exactly as people said.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for autonomous vehicles, although they're making good progress. Um, but meanwhile, we were able to start a new business that's had some success in scaling and is now a material percentage of our overall gross premium. And we've done a lot of other things along the way, from small kind of core innovations in just how we do business, just doing it a different way, to completely new things. And of course, Gen AI is the latest thing that's sort of, hit the transom for everybody in every industry.
Yeah.
And we're excited about that. But uh, when I joined CSA a long time ago, a lot of my friends, especially from Silicon Valley, were like, "Why are you going to an insurance company?" And I think innovation just came late. Disruption came late to our industry, but it's I always say it's an opportunity-rich environment. There's lots of
Yeah.
opportunities to innovate.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I completely agree. That's why I think everyone who gets in by accident, which is pretty much everyone, unless your parents were agents, that's basically the only way in.
yeah.
So often it's because I didn't realize how much we could do and how much opportunity there was.
Mhm.
It's not always why everyone stays, but that was it for me. I was hooked really fast at like fixing things and sees an opportunity. And there's like, you look around and there's tons of it.
Absolutely. And circling back to AI, I mean, the company wasn't really doing anything formally necessarily in AI or data science when I joined. But it is the original kind of data centric,
Yeah.
one of them, industries with actuarial science. So I think we're really well positioned to capitalize on that going forward.
Yeah. I've heard that. And we were the first subscription economy product, going back hundreds of years. It's like, yeah, all right. So we invented SaaS. That's another way to look at it. There's a lot I wanted to hit on from what you just shared, including you may be the first, if not only person to have started at Apple and ended up in insurance. So congratulations, you got it right. No one would ever think that. You mentioned BHAG, for those who know, big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yes.
Um, but your point about the sort of you have what you wanted to achieve, and then the whirlwind or the fire of today hits you, and you're at the end of the day, you're exhausted, and you realize, oh, I've got nothing done that I thought I was going to do. I
Mhm.
think about so many insurance professionals and what they're slammed with in doing the day to day. How much is on them to be the sort of glue between the systems and the customer experience. And of course, the customers are on the receiving end. They don't always love what they're getting, but if they could see what they weren't getting because someone was protecting them from it, even
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
Um, that tends to be where I hear a lot of the AI talk is efficiency, smoothing things out, marrying systems together, which is all fine. Like I always say, I'm an ex-management consultant. I love efficiency, but that's not really the heart of the issue. Efficiency, expense ratio, that's not where profitability constraints are. That's not where you're going to move the needle materially on
Mhm.
the premium that, the rate that we end up having to charge for product. We're talking about the affordability of insurance, which is as much a challenge for consumers as the affordability of offering insurance is for many carriers today.
Right.
Um, whereas I think AI actually could be this big unlock from an indemnity standpoint, rating losses, et cetera. How are you thinking about AI for CSA, but also given that you see a large swath of the market, you guys are a major player. Does that inform, and your non-insurance background, does that inform a sense of what we could be doing with this?
Absolutely, in my opinion. I mean, our strategy around AI is really around how do we, and particularly how do we harness the power of Gen AI? Because it
Yeah.
is, I'm a natural optimist, but I'm also a natural skeptic. And when the whole, kind of chat GPT thing hit the scene and all the hype cycle really took off around Gen AI, I'm like, let's just see. We've had other moments like this in the AI journey over the last several decades. But I'm now a believer. I believe this is real. I mean, even the people who are building it are like, we can't believe how fast it's advancing.
Yeah.
So I believe I really truly do believe that Gen AI it is to me probably the most like the internet. In I'm old enough to have been working before the internet. And when the internet happened, I mean, if you asked anybody, like, I mean, we had like everybody's playing with fonts and colors and website
Yeah.
designs, and like very superficial stuff that's like, ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but if you reflect many decades later and you sort of say, wow, that really did truly transform work in almost every industry,
Yeah.
maybe later for some of the more heavy industry kind of stuff. Um, but I think Gen AI has that potential as well, and certainly for our industry. So, our strategy is really how do we harness the power of Gen AI to transform our work and how we work,
Yeah.
and the strategies around how do we um, embed or instill this in our company as you could say a strategic capability. I think it's really a set of strategic capabilities, but to create sustainable business value and competitive advantage. So I see it very much, you want to apply a strategic lens to where you make your investments and where you target. I come from the innovation, kind of world. I'm a big fan of letting a thousand flowers bloom
Yeah.
generally, but I don't think that's the right strategy with Gen AI personally. I think to really, capture business value in a repeatable, sustainable way, you want to target, very essential parts of your business. In our case, we've stood up an AI accelerator in my organization, and it sort of acts on behalf of the organization as a center of excellence to really do what I said. And how do we embed, Gen AI and everything associated with it? Because you have to think about governance and controls and guardrails like earlier in the process maybe than you
Yeah.
might normally, because we're going to be regulated clearly. We already are regulated in normal AI, and it's
Yeah.
going to be a little more challenging with Gen AI. But we're basically targeting the most strategic areas of our business: claims, underwriting, service. Um, I would say most of like personal lines insurance is highly commoditized. So, a lot of people are shopping for the lowest price. We're not trying to compete on price.
Yeah.
We serve AAA members, and we always have in our whole history. So I think we differentiate ourselves with how we already do a great job of servicing our AAA members and corporate customers on the commercial side. But I think the areas to differentiate are in those frontline facing areas. And, we're starting with claims. And while that's not going to be a top line thing, it is going to be a bottom line thing. So it is targeting our P&L in
Yeah.
terms of, how can we bend the, losses down, like in areas where everybody's having challenges, like,
Yeah.
casualty claims, bodily injury. And underwriting, I think is going to we've been adopting different kinds of traditional AI tools and machine learning tools, like the Cape Analytics type tools, for a long time already. And I think Gen AI just gives us more potential to expand and accelerate kind of how we think about that. That is an area that's going to be, more in the crosshairs of what the regulators are going to be watching in terms of, eliminating bias and,
Yeah.
unfairness or discrimination. But, our approach is really targeting those strategic areas for the sustainable, kind of business ROI. And then also investing, just like we did in the early days of building our innovation culture, investing in bringing along the whole company, equipping our employees with tools that help them every day with smaller tasks. So we're not trying to shut down everything else. We're trying
Yeah.
to equip and enable our employees as well, train them, help them understand, our responsible AI guidelines, that kind of thing. And we have people from all over the company submitting ideas, and we're supporting those activities and giving them feedback and tracking all the stuff that you want to be tracking. But we're trying to be very focused on how we're going to get strategic value out of this and for the benefit of our customers. If we can
Yeah.
close claims faster with, more consistency, better accuracy and quality, that's going to be good for our policyholders, as one example.
So you listed a number of things that I think get more to the core of the product than just we're using ChatGPT to write coverage letters for us or something, which maybe you are, and that's fine. Um, you mentioned Cape Analytics. I'm sure there are other things you're looking at as well. Are you live with some of these solutions already and seeing the impact, or is it more we're exploring and we're seeing what might be the right things for us to do? Because I'll ask, because you mentioned regulation, and I've talked to some carriers who are like, well, we can't do anything because we don't know how it's going to play out. And then there's others who are like, we're moving ahead and we may need to adjust, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Two different schools of thought.
We're definitely moving ahead and we'll adjust as needed. Yeah, I mean, I don't believe there's been any enforcement yet, against the NAIC model bulletin, for example. But before that model bulletin, there were already, regulations
Yeah.
addressing, well, I guess we call it traditional AI, predictive models,
Yeah.
and we are well down the path, and we've been investing pretty seriously in traditional, predictive modeling and that kind of thing, for the last several years, and also made a lot of investments in cleaning up our data, getting our data governed and managed in a coherent way.
No
Which,
small
if
feat.
we had not done that, we would not be in the position we are, to kind of go after Gen AI. So to answer your question, I think we're fully deployed on several kinds of in-house and third-party traditional AI models.
Yeah.
And then we completed a pretty extensive pilot, and we are in the build phase now on a new solution that's effectively like stitching together several different models, Gen AI and traditional, in the claims domain that I mentioned,
Okay.
and beginning to explore underwriting. And we've already sort of defined some things we want to target in service. We just haven't started those yet in earnest.
Um, I'm glad you mentioned the data point. That's another holdup that a lot of carriers face. And I had a VC investor on a couple episodes ago who was talking about solutions he's seeing where carriers are leaving in place the green screen mainframe stuff and letting AI solve for pulling the data together across systems, which I think it sounds like sort of breaks his heart because he's like, we're not fixing what's wrong. We're just trying to band-aid it. But the flip side is sometimes you can't fix it, or the cost and time of fixing it is so extreme. It sounds like you've made the investment to try to modernize, clean up, align the data.
Mhm.
Did you consider using AI to sort of like solve for the problem without actually solving it?
So I would say that on the structured data side, we've addressed that, and we've made, we're that's all of our data is in Snowflake. It's
Yeah,
like we've gotten that under control. I would say the trickier part is the unstructured data,
yeah,
and we are definitely using AI not to not solve things. I think we're being clear-eyed about it, but we don't have any mainframe, so I used to work at Citibank, so I know
yes,
I know
yeah,
the mainframe problem, and trying to do things with modern platforms and mainframes. But so we don't have the mainframe problem, but we do
yeah,
have, unstructured data in different places. But the wonderful thing about a lot of these new AI and Gen AI, platforms and tools is that you can kind of pull in or access the unstructured data that you need and structure it,
yeah,
so that it is usable in like a Gen AI solution. And
yeah,
so we're exploring those opportunities to not slow down, but we're not being naive to the fact that over time we want to have our unstructured data as managed as our structured data.
yeah. Claims is full of unstructured data. I would say it's really information. It's not data. It's stuck in PDFs and emails and whatnot. We need to make it data
Absolutely.
so we can do something with it. Unless a
Mhm.
human opens it and reads it, it's just it's very interesting, but it's sitting in a claim file somewhere locked away until someone has a look.
Exactly.
But AI, I think, is a huge way to unlock the power of that. Um, I said there are a few things. One of them that I wanted to ask you about was uh, another common concern is when we're talking about public models or working with third party models, our secret sauce now starts informing, the broader market. We're helping our competitors in a sense. How do you deal with that need to have models that can learn and grow and do better without helping a public model to effectively compete against you or take, the secret sauce that makes CSAA versus any other carrier? Um, at the same time, like insurers, several have lots and lots of money in the bank, but still nowhere near enough money to compete with the open AIs of the world and the, tens or hundreds of billions that are being spent on a daily basis, it seems. So how do you balance this? Like, we can't just do it ourselves at that scale. We can't just use the public models more cost effectively because then we're opening ourselves up to giving away too much sensitive and proprietary information. How do you navigate that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think our we're first of all, I don't want to come off as like we've got this all figured out. We are learning every day as we go.
Yeah, which
This
is the right answer. If
and
anyone
this
says they have it
industry,
figured out, walk away.
yeah, the ecosystem is moving so
Yeah,
fast. I think you have to really be comfortable living in that, learning mindset.
yeah,
That being said, I think I don't personally. Well, one thing to address you don't want to expose your proprietary, secret sauce of any kind of proprietary data, PII, all that. I mean, there's ways to protect your corporate, proprietary
yeah,
information in terms of how you provision your use of some of these, third party or foundational models, the open AIs, et cetera. And so we're doing all of those things. We've done, I think, all the basic or the majority of the basic blocking and tackling around our contracts. And
yeah,
I mean, whether it is true or not, every vendor out there, from startups to big companies, are claiming, that they have agentic AI and all this stuff. And
yeah,
some of it's true, and some of it's aspirational.
yeah,
But I think we've done a good job of thinking through all those concerns, and we're not we definitely don't want to expose any of our company data, certainly not our PII, our policyholder data, our employee data. That being said, if everybody's using the same tool out there for something, what is going to differentiate you? First of all, I don't I think strategically about where do we want to build versus buy or rent.
yeah,
And I personally think in this moment in time, in this space around Gen AI, renting is a really smart strategy, because I think the tech stack is going to keep evolving.
yeah,
Some things that are independent layers, of categories of, you know, um, uh, software are probably going to get absorbed into something else. Like
yeah,
I've seen this movie before, and so we're trying to be smart about those kinds of trade-off decisions and avoiding lock-in and that kind of thing. But I think how we differentiate ourselves is our ability to execute and be clear-eyed about, what we're doing and why. And yeah, I mean, at some point, others are going to adopt some version of a similar solution. I mentioned our heritage as AAA and serving AAA members. That service orientation and orientation is deeply ingrained in our DNA, and
yeah,
we are very proud of it. And we've historically done most of that with actual humans, talking to actual humans. And in this new era, powered by Gen AI, we're going to be adopting more and more technologies. So we talk about things like how do we enable the human touch, but it's even if it's delivered, digitally.
yeah,
And so to me, I think about like we can differentiate ourselves by just executing, because it is hard to go fast in this industry, and it's hard to go fast in a lot of big companies. But we're trying to do that. And then how do we think about the ways in which we can really differentiate the way our service to customers and members, maybe that others might not think about.
yeah. So thinking about going forward, how do you see this all shaking out, or maybe where would you be, where do you think we as an industry should focus our efforts as we look at what we can do with AI, what customers will expect of us? Like, where is this going?
If I knew that, I'd probably be investing, and I don't know if I'd be doing my job I'm doing now. Well, I'll make a couple of comments. It's in an attempt to address your question. I don't know if I can answer it just
Okay.
directly. Um, I think right now isn't, I think everybody's thinking kind of along the same lines, productivity, efficiency, reducing, losses in the case of claims. I mean, that's still P&L to me. That's still very strategic.
Yeah.
Um, but the fun stuff should be, I think we have to kind of earn our stripes, earn in. But I think the fun stuff is there's probably completely new and different types of products and or product experiences that we could imagine tapping this technology for. Um, I think that we have to prove that we can deploy this, that we can execute, that we can deploy, these capabilities, and deliver some ROI. So that's why we're prioritizing what we're prioritizing. I guess you could call it low hanging fruit. But I think that two things. There's a lot more innovation that we can go after we get through that initial hurdle that I just described. And then I think this is going to have pretty dramatic implications for the workforce
Hmm.
that, I spent a lot of, I think there's some tests we took in our company, like it might be Strengths Finder, I'm not sure, but you get 5 skills, and I'm a futurist. Shocker. I
Yeah.
live like in Jetson's world. I'm like, when am I going to get a flying taxi? All those things. Um, but I really do. I think a lot about the implications of this technology at scale, and I think that it's just like the internet changed a lot of stuff about the
Yeah.
composition of workforces and how businesses work,
Mm.
how they serve customers, how they market, how they manage their operations. I think this is going to be like that, just not right away.
Hmm.
And so that's going to be an interesting journey. Um, I don't personally see it eliminating jobs immediately, or possibly ever. I see it augmenting humans and making them a lot more powerful. I know I've been reading Reid Hoffman's book on, I think called Super Agency, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, and he's so optimistic. I love that. But I mean, and when I reflect on all the major technology inflection points or big platform changes over my decades of working, it's not like all these jobs got eliminated. Maybe some did, but mostly they morphed and new jobs emerged. And I think that's going to be true here too. And I think but I think what anyone human can do with all these little agentic assistants
Yeah.
doing work on their behalf, and the humans maybe orchestrating that and delivering, I think that's going to be really interesting. And I
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what, it's not in focus. It's more of an intuitive feeling that
Yeah.
that's where it's going to go.
I mean, you made that connection, internet and AI twice. And it does remind me of, like, I've said this way too many times in the show, so I apologize to any regular listeners, but I also started in the early days before the internet was a thing. And I remember my first boss in insurance saying to me, like, have you heard of this internet thing? Agents will be gone in a minute. And so, yes, like this internet thing, you can just say the internet. And we still capitalized it and whatever. But the presumption was, half the world's going to lose their jobs, and
Mhm.
that largely hasn't happened. Now, we had a travel department around the corner from us at this carrier, and they all, lost their jobs within a couple of years. So it definitely did have an impact on some employment. And it opened a completely new field where, there was no Expedia, Travelocity, like
Mhm.
Trip. I'm trying to remember all the names of them. Anyway, Kayak, whatever, a bunch of them.
Yeah.
There was no Airbnb. Like, there are new things
Yeah.
that are then created. So it's different. I feel like AI is different because of the fact that it actually can do work or will be able to do work. But I think that's the same thing that people felt with the internet is like, well, this is different than when computers came out. You rewind to when computers came out and people were probably like, we're all going to be out of a job. What about all those typists that are everywhere? You know, they were the
Yeah.
typing rooms.
The typing bank. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to fast forward X years. I'm not going to say 20 years because I don't think it's going to take that long.
Yeah.
But was this actually different? Or is this just the normal human reaction to what is a very profound and material new approach, new technology, transformative thing? You know, like when the car came out. Well, if you drove around a cart with a horse or a donkey or something, like yeah, you're out of a job. But for so many other people, it created.
Mhm.
Um, I think we're probably just living through that, and that's that initial fear kind of reaction. But as
I
a
think so too.
futurist, maybe you're seeing it through a different lens, which is hopeful.
I think I am hopeful about it because I have, I feel like I've lived through a few of these, smaller and bigger things, mobile, social. But yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but the internet is the most relevant, analogy to me because it was really hard at the beginning to sort of see what the ramifications would be.
Yeah,
But it's obviously, hindsight's 2020. It's a lot easier in retrospect. But I do agree with you. The unique thing about Gen AI is the fact, people are talking about general, artificial general intelligence,
yeah,
like reasoning at the level of humans. I'm still a little skeptical about that, but I'm also listening to all the, the expert voices, if you will, who are involved in this, and uh, it's going to be interesting to see. It's just going to be interesting to see.
yeah. Now, I will leave with this is I was waiting for the automatic laundry folding that the Jetsons promised. I didn't really care about the flying taxis, but the
Yeah,
taxis sound cool. I don't want to fold laundry anymore.
yeah.
Um, Debbie, I really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much for all this, and it's great to hear not just sort of like, oh, there's great things to come and taglines and hashtag kind of quotable moments, but actually some things in practice that are real and having an impact already today. I think
Yeah.
people are searching for that. Is like, yeah, we've seen the talks on stage at the conferences that sort of say a lot but don't say anything.
Yes.
Are people even doing anything with this? So it's good to hear from the front lines, like, yes, actually, it is already having an impact and it can.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation and I feel like we could talk forever. I certainly could about this topic, but yeah, we are very bullish. We have seen that, I mean, I've used the word magical. Some of the results that we've
Yeah,
seen just in the models that we've built so far, it's kind of wow. Like you can't imagine a human being able to do that with as much speed or accuracy or just pointing out like, look here first.
yeah,
It's amazing. So
right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the time.
thank you.